start off by saying, well, assuming the audio is working, better start off by saying there was a comment actually left a few days ago about this, sort of asking, oh, can we put the spoilers in the second half of the Azeroth review? Unfortunately not, of course, because the way this works, and hello to anyone that's new to this, is it's basically you guys discussing things as and when you come on. Not everyone is going to come on right at the start and be here for the full 2 hours. So we discuss things as and when they come up. Unfortunately, we're in a situation at the moment where there really isn't anything else to talk about anyway. There's limited things to talk about in Legion, other than discussing how we think it is. And it's mostly to do with Battle for Azeroth. I suppose today we might end up talking about design issues a bit more than usual, because obviously Blizzard had their Q&A, probably their most controversial Q&A ever, I guess. This chat box is still not obeying me, but at least the font size is bigger than it was last week. We'll just have to see how that goes. And what else? Yes, there's other things. So last couple of weeks, by the way, what I've been doing is inviting people to come up with topics for me to do videos on. I actually have barely made a dent in the ones from last week, so I'm not going to put a new one on this week. Obviously, if anyone wants to talk about something, there's various, you just put a message somewhere and hopefully I'll come across it. But I'm not going to ask for another one just this week, because I'm still going to work my way through the list of things that people were asking about. But yes, the whole point of this, as I say, is for people to talk about whatever they would wish to talk about, whether it be, you know, to do with that Q&A, because there was a lot of topics that came up then that I haven't. I mean, I did a video, of course, on the GCD things. I've done a little one on a discussion, hi Fraser, on the Azerite armor, the respec issues. But I haven't really touched on any of the other topics that they talked about. But it was all fairly controversial. I can hardly think of anything they said that wasn't one of those things that will at least divide opinion. Like maybe, oh, I don't know. It's just all really triggering. I mean, some of which I'd be on Blizzard's side on it, but other people wouldn't be, and vice versa. I mean, again, I can't help but notice with the High Elf thing. Did anyone see the response to the High Elves thing? I mean, I'm sort of with Blizzard that there is no point in having High Elves as a separate race. I'm with them on that. But one of the things they said about it was the reason is because if they did, it would blur the lines between Alliance and Horde. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the problem with World of Warcraft. It's so racist. The game is, I feel bad, the game is fundamentally racist. This idea that these particular races are going to be aligned with the Horde and these particular races with the Alliance. The fact that you, and we have Pandaren that are on both anyway, so it's still a nonsense excuse. But, you know, the idea that we can't have High Elves because they'd look too much like Blood Elves, and Blood Elves are Horde, it's like, you know, oh, and we can't have two groups of people that basically look the same, one being Horde, one being Alliance. It's a fundamentally racist thing to say. Now, if they, you know, what they also said was actually there's not that many elves that you would call High Elves that weren't Blood Elves. I'd go with that because that's been my argument. Really, there's not really that many. But to do it along the racial lines is... do they listen to themselves sometimes? Really, do they? I haven't actually read anything community-wise, Reddit, forums, anything on the High Elves issue, because I could imagine... I don't know whether people's criticism of those statements are in line with mine, but those would be my criticisms of it. Ian is a company man now, can fling his game raiding experience out the window. There is an element of this, and I actually have sympathy for people in that situation, because of course they do have to toe a party line. Although I say he's the boss in terms of design, which he is, he still has superiors who can say, you know, yay or nay on a general direction of things. And remember, those superiors are not just suits. You know, some of them are people who built the company up and built the game up. They are games, well, they were games designers themselves. And it's their baby. And, you know, okay, fair enough. But so he has to. Obviously, he can't stand there and say, yeah, do you know what? We didn't really want to do that either. But, you know, blame Mike Morheim or something like that. Obviously, you can't do that. In my opinion, it comes down to the whole idea of allied races was character customization. And since we have a race in the game that is so similar, it wouldn't be worth their time doing. But this is, again, this is another one of my frequent criticisms. We get very little character customization in World of Warcraft. It's very, very poor. We should have a much broader range of skin tones, you know, hairstyles. They've improved on that a little bit. Various other features, even when people tell me, okay, they can't actually do it like you would have in modern MMO, old engine, blah, 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 blah. Maybe true, I don't know. But they could do more than they are doing. Hi, Jim. Mostly it's just salt and extremely snarky snipes from High Elf fans. Eventually it kind of devolved. What? An internet argument devolving? No. Can we just get light skin for Void Elves, maybe? Well, yeah, I mean, that, you know, that would be okay. They could still have their voidiness in their hair. Illyria, for example, and bear in mind, Illyria is a Void Elf, technically, because she's the ultimate, isn't she? But she still looks very High Elfish. Even in Battle for Azeroth, you know, she's still got the pale complexion, the blue eyes. You know, she is a High Elf. Illyria is a High Elf. So, yeah, that's what I mean. They could easily have it so that you've still got that customization. She doesn't even have the Void Elf, the hair thing going on. She just looks like a High Elf. So, I don't know about that. Hi, Higpig. Light-skinned Void Elves kind of defeats the purpose of Void Elves. That's up to the individual, surely. That is up to the individual person. They still have voidy abilities. I think it should be down to the individual what their character looks like, you know, within certain archetypes. And as far as the game engine can deliver on it. Why Blizzard didn't just make the Void Elves just like the Worgen? What, hairy? Oh, with two forms. Just look at Illyria. I'm not sure that the two forms is a very popular thing, though, because the problem with Worgen, I suppose you could do this, is, of course, it enforces the Worgen look, the furry look, as soon as you get into combat. I suppose they could have done that, so when you get into combat, you turn all voidy, and you have the option of the other one. That would be a solution, I suppose, that would satisfy. So you'd always look void in combat, but for role-playing purposes outside of combat. Yeah, I see no reason not to do that. You read both US and UK forums. Are you surprised the take they have not considering player-based feedback? Look at what happened to EA over Star Wars. Well, EA and Star Wars wasn't so much customer feedback directly. Because since when have EA listened to customer feedback? Sometimes it's not even possible to leave customer feedback. That was Disney. The EA and Star Wars was Disney getting on the phone and going, sort it out. And you'll notice if you're talking about, you know, the Battlefront, that was only for a limited period of time. As soon as they weren't going to hurt the Star Wars film sales, they went straight back into it, didn't they? Hang on, what am I missing? I don't know about Destiny 2. I have no thoughts about that. I have no familiarity with that at all. I mean, it's, you know, one of these things, of course. Blizzard can take the piss in many ways. It's all a balance, is it? Are there more good things about the game than bad? Or more specifically, is there enough in the game to make me want to play it over other things? For me, yes, it is. You know, I don't want to say that, you know, Battle for Azeroth is shaping up to be a disaster. There's a lot of really good things coming in Battle for Azeroth. But the irony is, for me personally, the really good things coming in Battle for Azeroth are all individual teams that small teams and individuals are doing. All the stuff I'm really rolling my eyes at is the stuff that would be decisions taken by the very senior people. So at the moment, yeah, I'm not very happy with Ian Hazacostas. Granted, I don't know exactly what things are within his control and what are not. But like the Azerite armor I was talking about in the video today, the issue with that, I'm sort of tempering it with the fact that I know they want us to farm multiple pieces of gear. It's bad from a gameplay point of view, but I can see why they want us to do it, because they want us to endlessly farm gear. The game is purely set up for loot, but that's where the problem is. The game is purely set up for rewarding us with loot. They hardly ever encourage us with anything cosmetic. They occasionally do. There's mount farming, stuff like that, sure. But it's such a small part of the game. We'll start again with the Master Loot versus Personal Loot debate. What do I think of Preacher's game? I haven't seen Preacher's video on the Master, I don't think. You'll have to just say what he said. You have made it to the live stream, Disco, yes. When are we getting the Metzen was done? You see, you know, I have a lot of respect for Chris Metzen because he was very pro-player, very pro-community. However, there were a few things that are not good about the game that I gather are his fault. Not least of which is the Retribution passive for Ret Paladins, because I now know that he plays a Ret Paladin, and I am told that the reason the Ret passive is staying is not because the game's designers think it's a great idea, not because the class designer think it's a great idea, but because Chris Metzen does. You know, and his word is law. So that's a bit naughty. I also gather he was the one who shat on the idea of player housing eventually. So, two pretty major things. So he doesn't get a free pass with me. I still overall respect what he's done and have good things to say about him. But those two things are blots against his name. Yeah, well, there you go, Mahal. You're too late. I already have done. You think Azerite armor is going to be bad? I don't think it can afford to be bad. It might be a bad experience. It's the key part of the game. It's the key driver in Battle for Azeroth. It's ultimately the thing that's going to keep us farming as Blizzard want us to do. My only hope, and yet we have no details on this at all, my only hope is that we don't have to do too much. But I noticed in that Q&A he already said we'll want to do several islands a week. He said after that you want to do a few islands, after that you don't get as good rewards. Well, I'm thinking, oh shit. So first of all, he's saying basically everyone will be encouraged to do multiple islands, not just one a week, more than one a week. At that point, I'm already going, ugh. Then he's saying the rewards won't be as good after that, but then I'm thinking, but are they good enough to compel a mythic raider to need to do more than 3, say, islands a week? If so, oh my god. No. Oh, so you saw a guy in an ice cream shop. That looked like Metzen. Maybe it was. Although maybe you should have said for the Alliance, because he plays an Alliance Paladin. I think what's horrifying people about Azerite armor is we have no info on it yet. Yes, this is the problem. We don't. We don't know how much Azerite we're going to be needed to be farming. You know, how much content we're going to have to do a week to be able to keep up with it. How many weeks it's going to take before we've got the effective cap, before the next tier of content comes out. You know, whatever it is. I can't watch it right now, Fraser. You'll just have to give me the edited highlights. How long do islands take? Well, not necessarily that long, but it's still and I know it's better than dungeon because you don't need, you know, your tank, healer, and 3 DPS. You could just take 3 people. That's fine. But you still got to, you know, it's still time. It's still time to do them and get people there. And it's not that I wouldn't want to do islands. I just don't want to be compelled to do them. It's like Mythic Plus Dungeons. I think Mythic Plus Dungeons are fun, but they're much less fun when I feel I am doing it as a chore. I don't want it to be a chore. I want it to be something I'd like to do. I mean, the irony is I did more dungeons during vanilla. When I was a raider and didn't need it for gear, I used to do more dungeons for fun when it used to take a lot longer just to do one than I do now. There's a reason, you know, where I can actually potentially, although unlikely, get upgrades from it. What do I think about the tiny details give us on the world PvP system? Bounty hunting and the rest. Well, they already talked about bounty hunting as a, you know, throwing it out there at BlizzCon. I don't know that they've really added very much more to it, have they? Unless I missed it. So... I mean, the thing is, the personal... Like, what Blizzard was saying about it, they were talking about player agency and it being fundamentally unfair. A couple of things. One, that you can be a trial in a guild and not get loot for weeks. Secondly, that, you know, it can be a bad system. People can do it badly and blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is this. If you are a raider, then, and you join a guild, you have the option to go to another guild. I know it's not easy. I have not found it easy, for Christ's sake. But nonetheless, you could choose to join another guild. And the thing is, if enough people say, right, this is my expectation of a guild, and I'm only going to join a guild that meets those expectations, then the sort of guilds that deal with loot badly won't exist anymore, because there'll be no one to fuel them. So, you know, people have to take responsibility themselves for that. Anything that happens within the guild is not Blizzard's responsibility. Anything that happens between players outside of a guild thing. So the issue, for example, with this war mode, I'm very positive about it because, you know, people ganking other people who just want to go about their business, I don't think is particularly fair. That's the sort of thing where I think Blizzard should get involved. But at the same time, anything that happens within a guild is entirely down to the guild. Well, I don't know how much of a significant blow it is to me personally, Diablo. You're saying it is, of course, a significant blow to guilds, not necessarily any old cutting-edge guild. Because in my guild, for example, we didn't use it to its best. It wasn't that loot was distributed poorly as such. But, for example, we didn't do split raiding. And I know Ian Hazacostas has now said we didn't do it because of split raiding, in which point you just lose all your sympathy because there's nothing else good that comes out of it. But we didn't do that. Now, it could be argued that the guild I'm in might benefit from this system. Because by definition, what you're doing is you're removing the advantage of getting the best out of the looting system. It's going to hit those guilds, the guilds that did it best, hardest. The very top guilds won't be hit at all by it. People keep thinking, oh, by definition, the ones at the very top will be hit hardest. They won't, because they will game whatever system you give them, they'll game it. It's a bit like me with DKP. First guild I ever went into used DKP. The second guild I ever went into used DKP, but a different DKP system, and so on. It didn't matter what DKP system was used in any guild I was in. I would game it. I would game whatever system the guild had to make sure I had the best gear. And the top guilds will do the same thing. Whatever the loot distribution system is, they will get the best out of it. The ones it hits are the ones lower down who could game the previous system but can't now. And in theory, you go, if it was just as simple as that, I would go, well, you know, tough luck. But it's the fact that you're removing choice from a group of mature people who can choose to join another team. You know, if they don't like it, I mean, that's what I would do. I would just, you know, if I didn't like it, I would just join another guild. Chat box needs to be moved over a bit, does it? No, that's actually what the chat box is, I'm afraid. That's it. That's how it is now. It is a new chat box. I had no say over this. I have some say over the colours. It's now behaving itself with the colours. Another update seemed to have solved the problems I had last week. But I still haven't got it quite right. We'll just have to see how that works. So, I'll go on Diablo. So, say you and I are raiding together. I get a piece that's bis for you. It's middling for me, but too high item level. You can't trade it. It has to be decent for an off-spec. I'm still not giving it. Now, to you personally, does this cause drama because you're not getting the loot? For me personally, no. Because my attitude to loot is, sometimes, like, there'll be a piece of loot that's super bis for me. Not just bis, super bis. And it goes to someone else. I've occasionally, in guilds, noticed when it's gone to someone else that that person's not even using it on the progress fights. What they're using it is for the easy farm bosses and stuff like that. Now, in that situation, you'd think to yourself, that's a bit silly. But that's all I think. I don't think to myself, bloody hell, I should have that. I just think, because it's not my responsibility. You know, the responsibility is removed from me. I just get on with what I've given the information. I've said, this is bis for me. I might add in, this is bis for single target fights, or this is bis for AoE, or this will be, I'll use it on this fight that's coming up, something like that. I've provided the information. It's then up to the people who distribute the loot to deal with it. I don't think about it ever again. I pay no, as soon as I've put my note in, I pay no attention to it at all. If I happen to notice it appear in my bags, then I will equip it, and that's it. But not everyone thinks like that. There will be people who will be right upset. Rightly or wrongly. So, you know, drama could ensue. This is why it's important that guilds think about this in advance and lay down rules for it. If any guilds think to themselves there's no point in updating their policy because they have no control over it, that's when there's going to be trouble. So, honestly, don't have a strong opinion either way, but attempt to look at it as objectively as I can. I think it's a puzzling change. It is a puzzling change because, as I said before, you're removing players' freedom of choice to decide, to agree on their own rules. When you join a guild, you are agreeing to their, amongst other things, loot rules. So if I join a guild and they say trials have basically low priority, then I'm agreeing to those rules. Whether I actually agree is another... I mean, I do agree that more established raiders should get, like, the main loot. I might argue that maybe I should get off main spec loot over a raider's off spec, unless that off spec is being used for progress. But that's my personal opinion. But if the guild says, no, we're doing it like this, if I'm joining that guild and they told me about it beforehand, then I've agreed to that. I'm not going to complain about it. And if it's one of those things where I get behind with gear to the point where I can't compete, and then I'm seen as someone who can't compete in the roster and don't get taken as much, well, then that's my cue to leave the guild, because the guild didn't manage things properly, and they're clearly idiots, and I chose poorly. But Blizzard have got no responsibility to interfere in that at all. That's how you think people are overreacting and make it seem like it's going to be a much bigger fiasco than it is. Well, I mean, part of the argument is not so much the impact. Part of the argument is just the principle of the matter. You know, you're taking people's ability to choose. Like, this is something that happened within a guild. You can move guilds. Something that happens between players, you know, in more of a mixed area, like LFR or world content and stuff like that. You know, Blizzard should police that. But within a guild, no. You prefer personal loots, get rid of that tank shield, dropping a fight with 2 DKs, and so forth. Yes, it does. It also makes it a bit of an arsehole to get the shield if you have a warrior tank. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. There's, you know, for all the benefits, there's a big disadvantage to it as well. Let's see, what else have I missed? But, well, the bottom, I mean, Kaz, the bottom line at the moment will be that it's done. It's a thing. You know, there's no loopholes. I know when, you know, Ian Hazacostas first talked about it, he didn't give any details. So people were imagining all sorts of, oh, well, maybe they mean this or that. Then at PAX, it seemed to be, again, confirmed, but again, no detail. There was none of that. the interviewer didn't really pin them down into a definitive answer. But now we've had the definitive answer. You know, like Ian Hassakostas himself said, there is no personal loot in BFA. It's just loot. That's just how loot works. That's it. He also said, because I know there's some people still clutching to straws about the item level thing. No, if the item you get is higher item level than you've got in the same slot, you can't trade it. You are not going to be able to trade it. So guilds will force players to hand over their loot. Well, the good ones will and should, but this is where your trickiness comes into it. We've already discussed this, haven't we? So you've got the player who maybe doesn't loot the boss and pretends they didn't get anything in the hope that there'll be something in their mailbox later on. Now, of course, very eagle-eyed guild officers might keep an eye on that, although your problems will start if one of the officers plays at that. You know, then you've got people who just straight up pretend. You say guild kicked as if, you know, but even very high placed guilds, there are certain players that will just never be kicked. Almost, I mean, they sort of know where the boundaries are. Anything to which you can turn a blind eye, they often do, because it's such a key player. Either because they play a spec that's super hard to impossible to recruit, and they play it well enough that you're not going to be able to replace them or something like that. So, you know, some people do get away with being arseholes in guilds, even fairly highly placed guilds. In fact, sometimes, especially in fairly highly placed guilds, there are some highly placed guilds that are, obviously, the likes of Method will have very firm control over it. I'm talking about, you know, ones maybe just inside the top 100. So there are certain people that are largely indisposable. So it's not an easy thing to deal with. Plus, as I say, the level of policing, maybe some officers can't be asked to do it as well. And then, of course, you've got the arguments over, it's a small upgrade for me, but it is an upgrade. It's a bigger upgrade for them, but it's still an upgrade for me, and it's mine. Blizzard gave it to me. Whereas the attitude needs to be, if it's possible to be traded, we're going to deal with it as we would have done Master Loot. You don't think the good guilds will need to force people? Yes, no, they will. People have it in their head that very good guilds have got all team players. No, they don't. I mean, you can see it in other sports as well, like in football. Hi, Clifardo. You've got, you know, even in the best teams in the world, you've got selfish players who don't really play for the team. You know, and it's certainly no different in an amateur game like World of Warcraft. You will have some people that are playing for themselves. You know, they put themselves first. The only reason they toe the line at all is because, you know, the guild is as highly placed as they can get into, and so it's worth it for their personal glory. Hi, Frenchie. But no, I don't think it's necessarily even true that the higher up you go, the more people there are that will play as a team. The more likely to, because the higher up you go generally means you've got a stronger leadership or a more involved leadership that can not only recruit the people they need, but keep them in order. But the individual players will, not all of them, of course, but some of them will push as much as they can. Still waiting for this thing from Frozen. It must be a big one. If you push Mythic Plus, you will have, like you have now, 3 to 8 slots of Mythic Plus gear. Yeah, but again, what do you call push? I don't fancy doing what most people would call pushing Mythic Plus. You know, it's just fitting it all around the raiding is it's more time than I want to be spending doing compulsory content. Like the raiding I enjoy. The other stuff, when it's compulsory, less so. You know, I'd like to be able to do stuff now and then. And maybe we will, because we have no details yet. Maybe we won't have to do that much, realistically. Maybe they'll get the balance right, and Mythic Raiders won't have to do any more islands than, say, the average person. just doubt it. I doubt it. But, you know, as we've said already, we don't have enough information on that. Just trying to check my notes, see what if they've said anything else about it. No. I'm enjoying my ESO at the moment. The problem is though, I'm trying to make a second character, but I keep changing my mind. Like I started another one yesterday on the stream, and now I've come today and I'm thinking, maybe I'd like to do some healing with it because I quite liked healing on it. I should have changed the race. I've started another one today. Oh my god. Let's have a look. Not to distract from the... No, you distract away. We can always come back to topics. You're interested in the topic of newer players or more casual players having a lot of anxiety about jumping into harder content. Yes, indeed, that did come up. I mean, that is true. I as I say, with the LFR thing, the idea that maybe the reason why some people are not jumping from LFR to normal is anxiety about having to actually interact with players who might be arseholes. I have the same thing in ESO. Like, I am going to, at some point, build myself up to using their dungeon finder, which I now gather will transport you to the dungeon, because it didn't do that when it first came out. But I've tried to look on forums to try and get a general gauge of the community, because you have games like, you know, you've had MMOs where I would say World of Warcraft is by and large a fairly negative community. It's not terrible, but you know. And then you've got like Lord of the Rings Online, where it's by and large fairly positive community. So I was trying to find out there, and I've got mixed reviews, so I'll find out myself. But yeah, I'm bound to be hopeless. I will obviously queue up as DPS to begin with and see how it goes from there. But I need to get a working damage meter, because there's people keep coming to values. Oh, for this, you should be able to do this much damage. But the recount doesn't seem to work for me. It keeps coming up with errors. You never thought loot drops random... Well, in terms of getting the loot you want, with Master Loot, it's... Because that's another thing, just statistically speaking. The way loot drops, it's a fairly normal distribution over, let's say, a couple of months. So you're likely to get the loot you need over a certain amount of time. However, this new system works against that, because it stacks the odds in favour of those who share more loot with the rest of their raid. So Boomkins will do very well out of it. Depending on your roster, in our roster, a hunter would do very poorly out of it, because we have one hunter. They're stuffed. They're buggered. They're getting their own loot, that's it. No one else is going to give them a thing, because they won't be able to. Do I think I'll be Ret again? I will always be Ret. No, I shall always be Ret. While ever, you know, it's all there is to it. The Paladin in this game is very strongly modelled on my Dungeons & Dragons thing, and that's how it's been. And that's how it will be. Even though I did heal earlier on in the game, that was only because, first of all, there was a blurring of the line anyway. I healed as Ret when I first started raiding. But also, you know, there's nothing else really to do. As soon as Ret was made viable, then I basically changed to Ret. Got you to think about some stuff that Pritch was saying in his new player experience video. He made the point that the vast majority of players are very bad. Of course, inevitably. I mean, like, you know, I am bad in any other game. I am bad on any other class that I play. Until, like, sometimes when I play a class, a bit like if I'm going to get it ready for split raids, I will learn how to play it to an acceptable level for at least being able to do heroics easily. But beyond that, yeah. Because I don't play them. Like, someone was having a pop at my playing of the Arms Warrior in LFR. I play it for about four hours every 6 months, so, you know, I'm not going to go through guides and learn how to play it. I'll just do what everyone else does in LFR. He seems to think that a large part of the reason for that is that the game doesn't do much to teach you how to play your class more optimally. No, it's not. The game can't really do that. It's absolutely not that. Any game to play it to maximize it is not going to be intuitive. The other thing is, you can't force it anyway, because you can't make it too difficult to do if you don't play well. Because that's not right. Because then people will be put off. Because they won't be able to play the game. Like, I remember back in vanilla, you know, I leveled Paladin first, and then I leveled a mage, or that, you know. I was leveling lots of other things in between, though, that just never made it to level 60. I kept deleting them because I didn't like the look of their face or their hair or something. We didn't have light barbers then. And I remember on my Warlock, and I was still quite inexperienced at the time, but just for a laugh, I made a human Warlock. And I kept dying. By the time I was level 10, I must have died about 5 or 6 times. Didn't know what I was doing. And then I left it and then played the game. And I got better at the game. I started looking at other people. And then I went and leveled another Warlock later on in vanilla. And I didn't die at all. I didn't know what the problem was before. But I just got better at the game and understood more of it. Because when you push yourself to more and more difficult content, you do have to learn more about it. But before that, you don't at all. And it shouldn't be like that as well. The game can't be set at the level of a mythic raider level of skill. Because that's fundamentally unfair. And, you know, so there's nothing wrong with that system. It's the same, again, that's the same as any game. I liken it to more traditional sports. You know, people who play Sunday League football, say, are atrocious compared to people playing in La Liga or the Premier League or something like that. Because inevitably, you know, they're not professional. They're not putting as much time into it. Any skill requires practice. You know, you have to practice it and practice it and practice it. And if you're not doing that, then you'll not develop that skill. So Blizzard shouldn't do anything about it. They should simply make the classes accessible to both people who just want to do basic content and those who want to do more competitive content, and allow enough freedom of expression, so to speak, to allow the better players to distinguish themselves without making the game too difficult at the easier end of it. Obviously, you shouldn't make mythic content easy for anyone. Like Preach, he certainly, I mean, anything to do with raiding on a factual basis, you know, is fine, because he's been a raider, but he still does now and then. But he's not a mathematician. I'm not convinced with his analytical skills. Which is why in his last Ret Paladin guide, he advised as second choice a relic that had 0 DPS. But there you go. Get more. Well, I'm certainly in favour of getting more of a community thing into it. But ultimately, to do that, you need to encourage guilds, really. I mean, this is the thing. This is the madness for me. Here's the thing, right? So, obviously in World of Warcraft, I'm, you know, a raider and of some experience. I know how to approach that. Elder Scrolls Online, I don't. Right? I'm a complete casual. I am the equivalent, not even of the LFR raider. I don't even do dungeons yet. So, when I do, my plan will not just be to queue up for random dungeons. I will inevitably have to do a bit of that. My plan will be to join a guild. My difficulty will be finding a guild that is suitable for me. In other words, I want a guild that's going to do the sort of things that I do. Because in ESO it works different as well. You can be in multiple guilds for different purposes. So I'll need a guild that is okay with someone who's casual, because I can play for a couple of times a week and then disappear for several weeks because a new tier has come out in World of Warcraft or a new expansion. But, you know, so I need a guild that will do that. But also a guild that, on a very casual basis, of course, does dungeons together. And, you know, things like that. But that will be my approach. My approach will not be to pug these things. My approach will be to find a guild. Because in a guild, everyone is invested in helping you out. In a pug, nobody is. You know, in a pug, it's an essentially selfish endeavour, unless you happen to be there boosting a friend. in which case it's still selfish, but a slightly smaller group of players than just you. So that's what the encouragement needs to be, you know, to join a guild. But of course, the difficulty is in finding a guild that is going to do the content that you want to do. That's not always easy. Well, yes, this is the danger, Diablo, that those people will just hear horror stories about guilds because, of course, you know, if you join a guild and have a bad experience, it might be natural to feel that, okay, I'd be better off in a pug. But in fact, that's just a bad guild experience. But the principle behind guilds is superior, and therefore it has to be said that if you keep plugging away at it, you know, if you kiss enough frogs, you get your prince, don't you? Yeah, I avoid pugs these days. I didn't used to. Again, it could be argued, community. In vanilla, I used to actively, when I didn't need to anymore. When I was a raider, I couldn't possibly get upgrades from dungeons. But I would still do them. Sometimes I would do them just, you know, as part of recruitment. But I would also do them just for fun. Because again, people were invested in everyone having a good time because you needed people to stay together. People were not easily replaceable if they left, so you needed to get on. Plus, of course, it could be argued that the fact that you couldn't transfer servers or change your name of your character or anything like that meant that you had a name on a server, you know, and you didn't want to get a bad name. So there was that aspect to it as well. So where you have a healthier community, you absolutely have a much more enjoyable time in the game. So quite how Blizzard can encourage that, it is a bit of a poser. Maybe this communities thing that they're sort of pushing in BFA, maybe it'll help. Maybe it'll just be a half-assed idea that won't really help enough. I don't know. But at least they're trying something now. I think after years of just leaving us to it. Yeah, that is a very important point, Higby. I've said that before. The thing is, when I look for another guild, I go to WoW Progress. Why? There is an in-game tool. It's just shit. Why don't Blizzard improve that in-game guild finder? Because that would be way better. Surely to God they can do something way better for not only very casual players, but also much more experienced players. You know, let guilds sell themselves on it. Individual guilds sell themselves on it. Allow it to be so that you can flag yourself as looking for a guild and you can fill in information to make it quite clear what sort of player you are and what you're looking for. But the guild can do the same thing. You can also, as a player, browse guilds and stuff like that. Just update that system. That would help immensely. And again, they could then put tips in the game and things like that to regularly remind people, by the way, do you know about the new improved guild finder function? Are you looking for a guild? Are you looking for a casual guild just to do raids now and then? When you're available, well, maybe you'd like to think about these sort of things. Click on this option. And they could help push that. The guild recruiting system in game is appalling. It's worthless. It's not at all fit for purpose. No, there isn't anywhere properly in the game for to look up a guild. That is the issue with it. But it could easily be. They easily could do that. Do I think that could lead to some sort of false advertising? The guild will be pushing Mythic soon. Well, of course. But then that's down, you know, that's buyer beware, isn't it? I mean, that's for you to check them out. You can WoW Progress gets all its information in terms of the verifiable information from the armory anyway. You know, you could just have a thing that links to the armory and brings it up in your browser. Because the information that from WoW Progress is from the armory. You know. Well, you see, that's the thing. Yeah, it'll never replace Discord too late unless it's magical. Blizzard wants it to replace. That's why. See, this is what makes me think they won't. It'll be a half-assed effort. This communities thing. I don't think Blizzard are doing it to really. I don't think they've had an epiphany and gone, do you know what? We should encourage more of a community spirit in the game. I think they've done it because they don't like Discord. And I think they want players to use their own system. But their own system is not as good as Discord. And the problem is, even if they make it as good as Discord, it still won't work because the Discord communities are established. And also, in Discord, Blizzard can't spy on you like they can in a game feature. So, you know. But not that many people are paranoid enough to think that that sort of thing goes on. But in the class Discord, for example, the class Discord communities would never move to official Battle.net ones. Because the class Discords work on the basis that, you know, you've got some restricted forums where you don't have members of the development team. Where you can sort of have discussions without feeling that you've got to, you know, like tread on eggshells to avoid upsetting some precious snowflake over there. The whole communities thing, but the option to join a voice channel prominent is pretty nice. It's interesting. Yes, the voice chat in there now is interesting. Whether it's nice depends entirely on the experience. I will try it out when it goes live. I don't feel like trying it out on the beta. Whether it's nice depends entirely upon... I'm not sure that it will be a good idea to use it in LFR, but I'll give it a go. But it'll be a very good idea, obviously, for Pug, normal, and heroic raids. Definitely for that. You know. Oh, hello. Oh, we're back frozen. Hello. So let's have a look. Blizzard doesn't kill split runs nor slow down mythic progression or not protecting trials. It will kill split runs for a lot of guilds. The top guilds, no, because as I say, they can game any system. The player base has become worse over time. No, it hasn't. And the gap between high-end mythic raiders and the rest of the player base is as big as it's ever had. No, that's not true again. Again, he does these things. That's not true. In fact, the opposite is demonstrably true. We've got more mythic raiders, people who've killed multiple mythic bosses in this expansion than ever before. There is none. If I do, I'm going to have to mute stream because there's no chance someone isn't yelling slurs left and right. Oh, yeah, I can't stream it. Oh, no. I don't even allow my guild Discord voice chat on stream. There is no way that I'm going to be streaming with voice chat on in the game. Or if I do... well, there'd have to be the option for me to filter that with voice meter. If I can't put that through the virtual audio cable, then without... Because if it's on the same channel as the game sounds, then yeah, I will not be able to stream it. That's not happening. The player... This is where... Right, Frozen. This is where Preach is completely and demonstrably wrong. The player population that does normally heroic and mythic is at life support low. It is way higher than at any point ever in the history of the game, and that is a fact. Oh my god, no, that is him. It's not necessarily bullshitting because, as I say, he is a poor analyst. It's quite clear he does not have. Well, I know he doesn't have any analytical training. He's got no science or maths background, even though he sort of claims to, but I know he doesn't. No, it's way higher than ever before. Way higher. So if he's going to try and link anything to the idea that, oh, raiding's in decline, no, it's not. You know, there's loads now doing it. Now, whether that will translate in BFA, because one of the ideas I have for why there's so many more is actually because of Titan Fortune. It's a ball ache for those at the very top end of Mythic raiding. But for those who in WoD struggled to make the transition from Heroic to Mythic as a guild, it helps them out. Because it now means if you take a couple of months to get yourself through Heroic properly and get yourself ready for Mythic, you're so well geared that actually you've got an easy in to the first few bosses. And that keeps... I mean, you lose momentum eventually as soon as you sort of get to the bosses that actually... that you can't just bundle over with gear. But the theory frozen men is based on something that's just factually wrong. You know, I mean, it's not even a little bit more. It's way more people raiding Mythic now, and raiding in general. I mean, I remember right at the start of Legion being taken aback a little bit, and I actually asked Kira, who does Warcraft logs, you know, Jesus, there's so much more activity on Warcraft logs. Is that just because more people are using Warcraft logs or more people raiding in general? He said there's just more people raiding, full stop. You know, and when you sort of find all the census programs, all the stuff you can do to try and work out how many people are actually beating certain bosses, it's way more than during previous expansions. But yeah, I mean, you know, he's got some sensible things to say on a lot of raiding issues. But when it comes to analysing anything, sorry, no, he's just... I don't know whether he makes it up for impact or whether he's just wrong. But he is very wrong on that. Blizzard tries to tackle the community perception, what guilds are like because of bad players corrupt guilds at the lower level. Well... that statement you can go along with because Ian Hazakostas basically said that, didn't he? What did he say? I've written it down somewhere. Or he certainly implied it. He was talking about the fact, you know, when he was he was saying that, you know, a lot of guilds have distributed loot properly, implying that there's also quite a few that didn't. You know, and he uses words like, you know, oh, it puts you at the mercy of blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't because you choose to join that guild. But he's making out the raiders who choose to join a particular raiding guild are somehow victims. Which is just not the case. Yeah, but well, he needs to, you know, I mean, what has he got to back it up? Well, I know that's wrong because you can just look it up. Do I think we'll be able to report people for something they say on voice chat? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe that'll be worth asking Blizzard for the next Q&A. But either way, I don't think it'll stop people saying it. Like, people can sort of control what they type a lot more easily than what they say. Because to type, you've first of all got to physically type it out, and then you've got to hit the enter button. When you say it, you've just got a, you know, verbal diarrhea. But yeah, certainly I would agree with that last statement, that what they're doing is trying to, what they think is helping out a small number of people who, I'm not going to say only have themselves to blame, but at the same time are nonetheless masters of their own destiny. They can choose to join another guild. And in actual fact, they're, I mean, hurting might be a strong word, but upsetting a load of people, the majority of people who can manage it perfectly well. And are not very happy about the fact that, you know, the facility has been removed. Because, as I say, it's an attack on people's choice to come up with their own rules. And it's ironic as well that Blizzard have swung from one extreme to the other. Because we've swung from when Master Loot was in Pugs, where I was fully supportive of that being removed. Because I'm not saying it was a majority, but I've been in Pugs, and I've certainly known people in Pugs, where loot was not distributed according to the rules as stated for the run. And in that situation, Blizzard really didn't want to know. At best, what they would do, if the loot rules were stated in chat, in other words, it wasn't on TeamSpeak or anything, so Blizzard could verify it, then what they would do is, if they verified that it was distributed wrongly, they would take it off the person who got it. But they wouldn't give it to the person who should have got it. So Blizzard really couldn't be asked. Blizzard's actual official line was, it's up to people to organise themselves in these groups. So you've gone from that all the way to people in the most organised guilds in the world cannot be trusted to deal with loot. His argument is by reading 2,000 comments long threads in last week on MMO Champion. There's two things I would say to that. He has never read 2,000 comments on one issue like that. That would be a hideously inefficient use of his time just to do a vlog on. And secondly, seriously, seriously, he's got his information from an internet forum. Right then. No, behave. Oh my God. This will be the same sort of forum where half of people complain about what Blizzard are doing will be saying that they won't even be playing the next expansion. Oh, I'm quitting. Oh, no. Oh, should we think of another topic to talk about? This is too sad now. But I mean, it's here. I mean, these are the things that are going to be here. The GCD thing, ironically, is one of those that's less here because it's not like anything has specifically changed. It's just certain individual abilities have been put on it that weren't before, but they've already said they could take some off. Well, the high elf thing, I mean, yeah, that's I haven't looked at. I talked about that at the beginning of this review. I mean, I've got my criticism of what Blizzard said about it, but I haven't read, as I said, the Reddit or forums meltdown on it. Blizzard's ruined the game. I can't wait to get vanilla. Yeah. Well, that's something they're dragging their feet on for people who just genuinely want to play that. Of which there will be some, you know, for all, you know, the people saying, oh, when people try it, they'll see it's not as good as they think it is. And there will be people like that, but there are people who know full well what it involves and actually do enjoy that. But we still haven't had any news on it. Oh yeah, Preach, absolutely. You know, I've been a subscriber to Preach since he started. I remember his first video, indeed. So you know, but and I don't know what it's like. You know, when you're making your living out of it, maybe sometimes you have to come up with some. Maybe like a newspaper, you feel you have to come up with some drama where it doesn't exist. Oh yes, don't start the flat earther thing again. Oh, sorry, what? Oh, I missed a comment. What do I think? What Ian has said, we don't want negative feedback, we just want feedback. I think what he said, the distinction is, he basically said, we don't want you to tell us that the system's shit. We just want you to tell us where are the little loopholes that can be closed up, is his take on it. But you know, which goes right back to when they first... See, this is the thing. When I was first talking about it, when they first did that forum post on it, and people were pointing out to me, no, you've got it wrong. They said they're interested in feedback. I said at the time, no, they're not. This they're going to keep it in. Their feedback is, oh, what a fantastic system. Great, thanks very much. Which is basically what he's now said in the Q&A. The only thing they want to know is which individual abilities should be put on it. In other words, it's basically like a tombola. You know, you buy your raffle ticket and maybe you'll win your ability off the global cooldown. But anyway, you know, I've already bellyached enough about that. That's another thing that will be what it will be. You know, I just feel I have to have, you know, I need to say these things so that, you know, in a year or two's time, I can say, well, I did say. Just like with the Legion things that have now been removed because Blizzard have gone, oh yeah, that didn't work, did it? So... I don't think Swifty is to blame. I think, you know, I don't watch PvP players, so I know of Swifty, of course, but I've never watched any of his stuff because, you know, I'm not a PvP player. But macros are stuff that, you know, people, even I have used since like way back when. So there's still no rep paladin changes just yet. Remember, you don't have teams for each spec. You have class designers, and they have their workload and they move it around. Obviously we don't have our class buff yet, and we still haven't I mean, in a way it's a good thing, because I have a feeling that the next time that there are changes, it might sort of be the final changes. So the more time Sol Sacra has to convince the powers that be about a couple of things, the better. So I don't mind if they take their time on it. It means they're more likely to come to the sensible conclusion. How's leveling from 1 to 110? Yes, it is slow. And I also, whether it's boring, I suppose, you know, is a matter of opinion. I think some expansions are more boring than others, or more interesting than others, depending on whether you want to look at it glass half full or half empty. Which, of course, is an expression I don't really like. There's lots of expressions I don't like. I don't like that expression. It's a nonsense. I'm not going to argue against... I don't really like to comment on individual content creators, because, you know, that's just a cheap way to try and get views. Occasionally, if someone says something that seems relevant, I'll counterpoint it. But I'm not going to do a whole video just critiquing someone else's work. I'll critique Blizzard's work. Swifty probably... No, Swifty's not to blame. Blizzard is to blame. You know. They shouldn't have so many... Like, everyone knows, I said, everyone else, loads of people have said as well, not everyone. The easy way to deal with it, if you don't want them to stack up loads of things on a macro, then put them on cooldown. When you activate one ability, the rest go on a 10-second cooldown. Simple. And then you can still sequence them, but you can't stack them. Do I still think they're going to add a class buff? Yes, everyone's going to have one. Or debuff indeed, Diablo. Yes, debuffs on mobs. Some of them have. I mean, there are more pressing things at the moment than Ret Paladin anyway. Bearing in mind the Warlocks are still shooting cubes instead of Shadow Bolts. And I know that's an RT thing. But I also... have they actually got their full set of talents yet? I haven't actually checked. But last time I checked, they didn't even have all their talents. What change of movement speed would I like to add or change? Oh, it doesn't really matter anymore, does it? They're not going to... You know, at the moment it's polishing a turd. I would like Long Arm of the Law, but I don't. In the case of, you believe, Demon Hunters and Rogues with take X more Y damage. What's that? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, anything that does that is usually quite good. That I will quite... If we get a damage order of the sort that I know Sol Sacra is pushing for, then I will be happy, because that would be decent. Yeah, Warlock still missed some talents. Okay, they did last time I checked as well. Shadowbot. Oh, I think it looks cool. I mean, I thought the Holy Light looked cool when that... Because, you know, Holy Light, before they gave it its new animation, was just you stroking a Rubik's Cube. It looks quite good. It was a bit like a Bond villain, except instead of a cat, you had a Rubik's Cube. Did I read the World PvP Blue Post? No. Is it on today? Let us see. Is it on the blue tracker at the moment? Check MMO Champion. I don't think so. Oh, beta build update's just been announced. Yeah, I heard that. They put a new beta build on yesterday. They had to take it off. Apparently, you needed about 300... oh my god, you need a ridiculous 300 meg or something RAM. Hold on. You need a ridiculous amount of RAM. About 50 times as much as most people have. But yeah, they're putting the build back up again today, they say. Whereupon I noticed that WoW had their they were putting up like travel form of the Kulturan Druid, weren't they? I wonder if we'll actually be able to play it soon. You know, the Zandalari trolls and the Kulturans. Yeah, it needed something. Someone said about 270 odd gigabyte of RAM. Can't remember who said it now. But apparently that was why it would just instant. Oh, 276 gigabyte of RAM was required to run it. So yeah, a bit of an unfair requirement, really. Yeah, well, gaming PCs don't actually need more. For most games, I don't think any having more than 8 helps. I have 32 in mine because I don't use mine just for gaming. I have multimedia stuff that may be going on at the same time. Whether I'm getting any benefit from having 32 as opposed to 16, I don't know. I'm not expert enough. I just went to hell with it. It might give me some benefit when I'm rendering in multiple programs and trying to play a game at the same time. Or maybe even having WoW open or 2 WoWs open or a WoW and an ESO open or something like that. What's roads? Zandalar's just as, yeah. Uldir is the raid, yes. The first raid. I mean, I've got quite, I'm going to say I'm not an expert on how these things work. But I could get 32 gigabyte of very fast RAM, so I did. I think it just means a zone where there's raid in it. But Zandalar, of course, has 3 zones in it. They'll all have raids in at some point. Well, not all, each individual zone. Zandalar's a huge landmass. What are you on about? I suspect you did. Well, let's have a look. Are you reading this on Wowhead's Twitter feed? Let's just see what they're saying. They've updated the Uldir Encounter Journal with the name change. A boss has changed names, apparently. Oh, yeah, I noticed they're going to be doing like 6 raid tests this week. Starting tomorrow and going for the rest of the week. Obviously, I shall not be able to do those, but, you know, I haven't done any raid testing since WoD. World bosses, Pepe customizable questions. I'm not seeing anything. They do tend to tweet all their big news stories. I strongly suspect we won't get 6 raids. There will, of course, presumably, just like in Legion, be new dungeons. So there'll be times when we get Zuldazar. Yes, that makes more sense. That is the main zone, I think. You've got Zuldazar, Nazrim, and the desert one, that name I forget now. This is actually quite bad. I have played it for quite a bit now. But I don't remember the names of all the zones yet, and there's only 6 of them. I've made Voldun, yeah, that sounds about right, Safian. Well, fair dues, JD. I mean, the Alliance are having our city basically half flooded. I suppose it's only fair that the Horde city would get assaulted as well. By whom will be interesting. Yes, that's right. Which was more raiding than we've had for a little while, I would say, in Legion. It would have been nice to have another little mini one. But, you know, it is what it is. That being said, I didn't expect Battle for Azeroth to release mid-August either. So, you know, maybe it's sort of okay. I'm still not sure it is. I mean, if I put myself in the position of let's say, a casual player who nonetheless likes to play regularly and isn't in the beta or doesn't want to be in it, asks a long old lead in with nothing to do. The Vulpera starting zone. The Vulpera don't have a zone. There's just a zone where there's more Vulpera than other zones. The Vulpera are weeds. You know, you're having to save their arse all the time. They're pathetic. They can't, you know, they can't even control any territory. Well, okay, yes, it's not. Well, it will be a property of the Alliance because they will join the Alliance. They just have to be won over, that's all. Given that Jaina killed... Oh, she didn't actually... See, she's getting a lot of bad press over this now. She didn't actually kill her father. She just didn't save him. There is a distinction. You've only been levelling through the Alliance side to not spoil the Zandalar and BF. Well, that's bad luck tuning into this then. I don't hate things based on height. I have no issue with goblins, upon which the Vulpera are modelled. No problem with goblins. No problem with dwarfs. No issue at all. I have no issue with good gnomes. You know, there are good gnomes in the game. There's Blingtron. And, you know, there's Jeeves. I like those. Goblins are fine. I have no problem with goblins at all. I am not heightist. Gnomes just happen to be short. It's not actually one of their detracting points. I don't hate goblins. That is spreading fake news. I also don't hate Vulpera. I just think they're pathetic. That's not hatred. That's disdain. Well, yes. I mean, it's a similar sort of thing in Warhammer. The idea that orcs and goblins came from fungus. Hi, Retropally. Right, let's have a look at my big list of things that Blizzard also talked about. Hang on a minute. Done that, done that. We've sort of done that. Oh, racials. Yeah. I still have an issue with them having racials impact on gameplay, but they didn't say that much about it. They just talked about, you know, very, very strong ones. The problem with their definition, though, is a very, very strong one, is one that is useful in lots of situations, as opposed to one that's basically game-breaking, like the Goblin Jump, but for one particular encounter. Can't say fake news, that's your president's thing. He certainly popularised the term, I'll give you that. Did I talk about the distinction between levelling, dungeon and raid Azeroth? No, I haven't, Skeletor. The only thing I said in the video today that I noticed with levelling Azeroth is that there's not nearly as much of it as there was a couple of weeks ago. They seem to have changed their mind. They went from wanting us to have lots of Azeroth gear, well, not lots, but, you know, regular Azeroth gear as we level up, to I'm basically level 115 and I have one piece of Azeroth gear. I may have touched on the idea that I would expect the raid Azeroth gear to be significantly better than the other stuff, which creates a bit of a contradiction with what Ian Hazacostas said, when he said about, oh yeah, you know, if you play different specs, yeah, you are going to have to get different pieces of gear, but don't worry, there's lots of places you can get it. Well, if what you need is the raid gear, no, there isn't. There's like one place. Yeah, but yes, so that's what I think as well. But the problem is well, not the problem, but it was the case that there were more. End of major quest lines used to give you one as well. So before they did the wipe on my level 119, I had quite a few pieces of Azerite gear on that character. At the same point, if I was to do that character, do exactly the same content again, I would probably have 3. Oh, right, okay. I haven't actually got any in from a dungeon yet, but and you can't tell from the journal because the journal doesn't show them anyway. Didn't they say early on that Raid Azerite will only activate inside the raid? No. No, that wouldn't make sense. I didn't hear them say that, as it happens. That would not be good at all. That would be a stunningly bad idea. Because some people only raid for loot. It's no good if they can't use it. They don't care about using it in the raid. I mean, that puts it on the same level as the Pantheon trinkets. So, no, I think you may have had a nightmare there. Because that would be a disaster. I have never heard them. I've not heard them say that. I'm sure I would have remembered if they'd have said something like that. That would have stuck in my mind. Oh, dear. Also defies common sense. It does indeed. Because like I said before, like Blizzard, I think to their detriment, seem to think that the only thing they can tempt us with is gear upgrades. It's how they encourage us to do, you know, all these bits of content, gear upgrades. So yeah, they're certainly not going to do this where a lot of people won't even care about the Azerite armor then. It's like, well, if I can't actually use it, then why would I want it? So no, I think you can dismiss that one. I'm not saying they haven't done dafter things, but this would be right up there if they did that. But I think that's covered most of the topic. The only other thing they really touched on, as far as I can tell, that we haven't gone through yet, is them saying that Horde being evil is a matter of perspective. Not really sure it is. I mean, individual Horde characters may be fine. But the Horde itself is either sort of... Well, it's only good when it's not actually at war with the Alliance, ironically. Because what did he say? He said that they weren't really evil in Warcraft 1. They were just... It was nuanced, I think they said. Which is a load of rubbish. They drank demon blood, basically got drunk, and kicked the shit out of the Alliance. And now they've got drunk again and set fire to a tree. Yes, they are, face it. You're going to set fire to a tree. You're going to dump a load of toxic waste on your own city. I mean, the bottom line is, if you're going to start a war between two factions, it has to be someone's fault. It can be both of their faults, but it ultimately has to be at least one person's fault. Perfectly innocent people do not randomly go to war with each other. And I know what they tried to do when they sat down and obviously with Warcraft 1 there wasn't really a proper storyline, but when they sat down and tried to explain it properly, you know, they tried to come up with the fact that the Horde were duped. But the bottom line is, although the Horde were, you know, like, conned to a certain extent, as Grom himself said they knowingly took the demon's blood. They knew what it would do to them. They took it anyway. So, you know, they made their own decision. I will grant you that the Tauren and the Darkspear trolls sort of, you know, got themselves involved with a bad crew, because at the time it wasn't, because Thrall seemed to be behaving himself. But of course they don't seem to have kicked up enough of a fuss since Thrall left. But anyway, we shall see what happens with Saurfang. Saurfang is the one saving grace. The one last lingering thread to humanity, or morality, I should say, is a better word in this case. Oh, no problem, Fraser. I'll tell you what I didn't say, and I should. I noticed some people commented about it. And I hadn't actually thought about it, which was the idea that she could just be there as a love interest for Anduin. I mean, they don't need to, because I don't think World of Warcraft's going to last long enough to the point where you would think Anduin would have to get married and have a kid of his own. But at the same time, actually, it doesn't make sense. And I hadn't thought of that. Waiting to pass judgment on how the overall story goes. Yeah, well, of course, we won't find that out for another year and a half. So we'll be waiting a bit. I'm sure there'll be twists and turns along the way. And even then, you know, there's nothing to say that that particular story has to conclude in the next expansion. It might be, you know, it might be put on a slow burner until the following expansion. I mean, Jaina basically disappeared for the whole of Legion. Who's to say Saurfang won't do the same thing? And just pop up at the end. Yeah, just getting another Siege of Orgrimmar would be a dreadful conclusion. I mean, that's regurgitating what wasn't even a good story then. You know, it's like taking a bad period of WoW storytelling and using it again. Thrall certainly has no balls now. I agree with that. You know, any testicles he had remaining, he lost when he let us, or whoever happened to play Shaman, know that, oh, by the way you hold that hammer after like half a minute, it's way better than I would ever hold it in years of it. You don't, well, as a player, certainly, yes, you don't choose a faction for your leader, you choose one for the guilds. Absolutely. I mean, I would do the same. If actually, you say that. I mean, I'd still prefer the Alliance. Not because I saw them as the good guys. The reason why I prefer the Alliance actually is quite silly. And it goes back to Warcraft 1. And it's purely and simply because when I used to play Warcraft against a friend of mine, we both had very different playstyles with RTSs. I was more cautious, more defensive. He was very much more exploratory and aggressive. So I used to prefer playing humans because the human archers had a longer range than the orc spearmen. The orc spearmen did more damage with each chuck, but the humans had the longer range. So it basically meant I had a better early warning system of when I was being attacked. Because I would hear the... You would also hear them shout out, but the just told me, right, I know where that is, I'm going to sort him out. So that's the only reason I preferred Elias right from the start, and it just sort of stuck from there. Even when that was no longer a thing. As long as they don't corrupt X-Person and make them like Garrosh. Yeah, but the thing is, they pointed out that Garrosh wasn't corrupted. That was the thing. They said quite clearly Garrosh was not corrupted. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was in total control at all times. You know, he used the power of Yashiraj's heart thing, but it didn't corrupt him. They were quite clear about that. Honestly, you would like a more warmongering horde. That's not the part I take issue with. They're supposed to be led by orcs after all. Well, the original horde, of course, was orcs and was fairly bloodthirsty, yes. But at the same time, there's a difference between turning up to Stormwind with a bloody big army, not that you'd get it to Stormwind without being noticed, but, you know, that idea, and setting fire to someone's tree, you know. There's just a right way and a wrong way to do it. It's just the undead and the plague and all that doesn't feel very hard to me. Well, no, I mean, this is the problem right from the start. Obviously, they had to include the races that were there in Warcraft 3. So you had to have the Forsaken, but they also went with this very old style of 2 factions. I think if they'd have gone for 3 factions from the start, it would have worked a lot better. You know? So you could have had the Orcs, the Trolls and the Tauren in one faction. And then, I know it wouldn't have been straightforward to think what could you lump the Forsaken with, but, you know, I'm sure they could have come up with something. They could have had the gnomes. We just need dwarves and night owls. We'd have been fine with that. Well, Kazres, you say it was a mistake to put Sylvanas in charge. At the moment, I would agree. However, there seems to be some plan. So, as loath as I am to say these next words, I am at the moment prepared to give Blizzard the benefit of the doubt that they have a cunning storyline in mind. They certainly better. My only concern is, like, it might be natural for people to think, oh yeah, they set this up ages ago, so they must have planned this story years in advance. But that's not true, because we also know that they do hasty rewrites, you know. So they do change things at the last minute, storyline-wise as well. Have I heard of Total Biscuit's retirement due to battle with Cat? No, I didn't know that. That is sad. No, I had no idea. I don't really watch Total Biscuit stuff. Yes, we are supposed to learn why Vol'jin said that Sylvanas should be War Chief. Because, of course, we have to find that out in BFA. You know, Thrall taking his ashes to Zandalar. Although I haven't seen any of that in the beta so far. I mean, it's not necessarily something that's happening at the start anyway. That's maybe later on in the expansion. Maybe it'll be like the equivalent of when we had the Anduin storyline halfway through Legion. You know, that'll be Thrall turning up with his urn of ashes. But we'll just have to see what their cunning plan was. You're trying to think of other races for an exile races faction other than Forsaken. Blood Elf, Lepers and Dark Irons. Yeah, the problem is that ultimately all the races on Azeroth would basically be mistrustful of undead. Hence their term, the Forsaken. Because, I mean, literally, I mean, it was literally used to describe the human attitude towards them, but it could equally apply to any other. So it wouldn't be straightforward, but I do think a third faction would have been the way to go. I mean, maybe they could have split up the Forsaken a little bit. Maybe distinguish between ghouls and, like, skeletons or something as a couple of races. And, you know, just actually sort of create new races from within the what was the one during... except ghouls don't really have a mind of their own, do they? That's the problem. You've experienced enough Blizzard writing to suspect that it was just an excuse that maybe they'd consider much later. Well, there is that. I mean, I think the problem is, I don't think it's that Blizzard don't care about the storytelling. I think they do. I think the problem ultimately is there's too many people involved in it. And there's no guiding hand over the whole thing. There isn't anyone. Like, we're used to, you know, certain systems, fantasy game systems, having a more coherent narrative. But that's because ultimately there's usually one person who's got their hand on the tiller, if not just one person writing the whole bloody thing. But even when you've got other people, you've got that one person who is basically editor-in-chief and says, no, you can't do that because then that contradicts this. Whereas Blizzard don't have that, And they also don't seem to care if they contradict themselves. It's like, no, this is the law now. You know, we've retconned it again. It's fine. It's all sorted. Keep up. I have no issue with the gnomes going to the Forsaken. It could be leper gnomes. You know, the leper gnomes would be okay. They could have put those with the Forsaken. That would be fine. You say hopefully that changed with Christy Golden taking a firm lead. She's not taking a... I don't think... I know, you know, I don't think that's the case. I still don't think that that's really going to be her job. I don't think they will let her. The other thing is, I also noted... Remember, the novel she's written, that Into the Storm, whatever it's called, or Before the Storm, I can't remember now. The book that's going to come out. They put back, they announced it, and then there was a date that was supposed to be this month. And then it was put back. Now, there's only two reasons to put back a date for a book. One, distribution issues. Well, the problem is they put it back very soon after they announced the date in the first place. So I don't think that, and well ahead of what even there was the original publication date. So I don't think that was the case. And the other thing is a rewrite. So I think they've, you know, I think they changed their mind on something and wanted a rewrite of it. So, you know, if you think to yourself that she's going to have control over that project, I don't think so. Because you've got to remember, Diablo, the people at the head of that company are the people who created this game. It's their game, you know. And if they have a strong view on something, obviously they are going to say, no, I would do the same. So ultimately, she's always going... They're not CEOs in the normal sense of the term, you know, or board members or anything like that. They're actually former game designers who designed the specific game that they are head of the company that's delivering on. So there will be interference. It is inevitable. Inevitable. And even were there not, in terms of the stuff that's going on right now, I still have no confidence it will gel with what's come before it, because we don't even know what the official line is on quite a lot of lore now. I don't even know that they've stayed consistent with the Warcraft Chronicles. Well, I certainly like the raid to be good, but I also like a sensible narrative. I mean, it is the reason why I will not go back and... Any novels I never read in the past, I'm not going to go back and read them now, because I don't even know if they're canon anymore. You know, I could end up reading something that in order for me to buy the storyline, I have to believe something that I now know not to be true. Even though it's all fiction anyway. Absolute nightmare. So yes, I think... I don't know exactly what her brief is. We'll just have to see, but... And even then, I mean, let's say she does that job for like 3 years. I mean, that's not that much time in WoW years. Someone else could come in and turn the whole thing over anyway. It doesn't protect anything for the future. I mean, the raids, I think we usually fine with the raids. Very few raids have been, I would say, poor quality. The raiding and the level are usually fairly on point. Is it true that Mr. Robots and Raid Bots and Simcraft will be banned from BFA? No, how could they be? Where would that come from? I mean, Ask Mr. Robot won't be won't be accurate anymore because the way they approach it is just fundamentally flawed. I mean, apart from anything else, the people who create the SimCraft modules are amongst the first wave of people invited into the alpha. They're the people that Blizzard talk to directly. There's certainly no desire to prevent us using those tools. No, you can confidently dismiss that one. Blizzard. I mean, Ian Hazacostas even said in a previous Q&A, a few Q&As ago, that they use it, and they talk to the people who put the modules together. More importantly, you know, they consider it a valuable tool. I know they have also said, which seems to be a bit of a paradox in some ways, they've also said that they don't like the idea that we have these tools because it means we can, you know, learn the game too well, and then that makes it harder for them. But, you know, given that that's going to happen anyway, they can't stop us doing it. SimCraft is entirely third party. You know, the people, they get no, other than occasional clarifications on how something's working, they don't really get any useful information from Blizzard. And so they have to work it out themselves anyway. Which is why, for example, during WoD, late WoD, there was a tuning patch where, or hotfix, I can't remember. But basically, there was a load of ret abilities were buffed, and it included Hammer of Wrath. But Hammer of Wrath wasn't buffed. It just said it was, but it hadn't been implemented. But no one noticed for ages. By the time someone noticed, it was too late. The expansion was basically done. Yeah, anything that is entirely third party, and it's got no link within the game either. I mean, the only thing that to use raid bots effectively you need is the Simulation Craft add-on. Okay, that's an add-on, but Blizzard's not going to ban an add-on that just basically lists your gear. But Blizzard are quite positive about them anyway. They appreciate their work because it helps them out. It helps their own developers out for identifying things that aren't quite working as they might otherwise. It helps them, you know. So basically, people throw up strange things, and Blizzard investigate it. And if there is a strange thing, then they say, "Oh, there's a strange thing. We'd better deal with the strange thing." Well, the AMR thing, they've been a bit naughty in Legion. I mean, the basic model of their simulation was quite a good idea. It just wasn't accurate. That was the ultimate problem with it. Because it's a small number of people trying to do it for every spec, not all of which they play. But the way they go about it as well is not helpful. And then, but all the way through, you'll notice they've launched a bit of a campaign against discords, for example, because they know that the class discords are frequented by the actual theory crafters. So they've tried to shit on the class discords at various points. In other words, basically keep their own community enclosed. They don't want them going out. It's a bit like North Korea, Ask Mr. Robot these days. They're trying to keep them all enclosed from other sources of information by saying that it's all shite. So, but nonetheless, all the theory crafters do frequent them. So they are there to discuss things if people decide to have a sensible discussion at some point. Obviously, the way individual class discords is organised varies. Yeah, well, that's the thing, Skeletor. Yes, they are down talking all those people because what they're trying to do is say that, you know, they are the only source of truth. They don't want people going elsewhere because they need to try and make money from it. Why would people stay there and pay money if they can go and get better advice for free? So it's all very disappointing, really. Because the irony is, when they did that big blog, which really caused the shit to hit the fan, and they got so burned in response that they sort of had to apologise, but they still carried on doing it just on a more private. They were just a bit more discreet about it. That's all. Having only frequented Demon Hunter once for the vast majority expensible, it's a cesspool of useless shit. Oh. Kib doesn't do Demon Hunter anymore, does he? Because he used to get involved in that. He's all right, isn't he? I'm on the Demon... Well, I haven't looked at the Demon Hunter one for a while, actually, now that I say that. Yeah, I thought he'd stop playing Demon Hunter. Or at least stop working on it. Hi, Ziggy. 2D. Oh, are there? Which one am I on? I'm on Mardum. I haven't really looked at it for some time, though, I have to say. Because I haven't played Demon Hunter for some time. In fact, my Demon Hunter, which was my original split raid alt for Legion, is now my worst alt. Basically left it. Left it in Emerald Nightmare. Maybe we'll see Korea united. You'll never see Korea united. You just might see them at peace. The thing is, well, I don't have to get political about it. We'll discuss the politics of the Horde and the Alliance. Which are also two factions that are, you know, never united. They're just occasionally at peace with each other for a bit. Oh yeah, Azathorian. But doesn't he frequent the True Shot Lodge anyway? Isn't that like his one anyway? Don't know. Again, I'm sort of technically in some of these class discords. I just very rarely go into them. Oh yeah, Safian, I seem to remember you saying there was some argy-bargy in that Discord. I mean, I suppose the problem with the Demon Hunter class Discord, if we want to apply some hindsight to it all, was that because Demon Hunters were the new class for this Legion, there wasn't a ready established community of theory crafters or community contributors for that class when it all started, because the class discords basically became a thing for Legion, didn't they? So with the other classes, you know, there's long established players that already have their mini community. Oh, he has his own separate one, does he, as well? Okay. So, I mean, I suppose the Demon Hunter one may evolve. I don't know. We'll just see how it goes. But the other ones I would think are relatively stable. I mean, I've not heard great things from the Warrior one. I'm not actually... Am I in the Warrior one? I don't think I'm in the Warrior one. Apparently you don't get much sense out of the Warriors, so I didn't bother. Well, that's the internet for you, Safian, I'm afraid. People get annoyed when they ask what the best BFA talent spec is and they say, no, truly not enough information. Yeah. Well, this is the problem. People, I mean, to be fair to some players, they maybe are used to games. I mean, WoW used to be such a game where there are just these cookie cutter things. It's like, if you play this class, this is what you should do. And I think with Legion, of course, you know, obviously Bislists were out the window because of Titan Forging. Bis Relics was out of the window not just because of Titan Forging, but also because of the lovely Netherlight Crucible. I mean, I suppose we should be thankful, just coming back to the Azerite armor trait respec thing, even though it's not a wholly satisfactory solution, it at least means that it's not like the Netherlight Crucible, you've made your choice and that's it, done. But yeah, there's a lot of ifs and buts in terms of what you should have. And in BFA, with the talents, it could be like for Rets, a lot of the time, you know, if someone was to say what talents should you use, it would just be these. All right. Well, what if I want to do a raid? These. What if I want to do a dungeon? Same these. What if I just want to go out soloing? Same these. Whereas in BFA, that's not going to be the case. And it might well be, it's not even going to be the case, this boss these, this boss these. It might be, this boss take these talents, if you've got these Azerite traits. Or otherwise these ones, if you've got these ones. Right, my mess. What a mess it's going to be. Because I think over the course of Legion, we've largely trained the sort of people that would look for guides to the idea that a certain amount of simming has got to be done, but thank God for Raid Bots 2.0. But in BFA, it's going to crank up another notch. Well, yes, we're going to have to use tomes. I mean, I always keep a little stock anyway. I'm going to have to keep a bigger stock. But at the same time, you say it's going to suck. It might be better, because I have a problem at the moment. Every now and then, I do change a talent for whatever reason, just for the hell of it sometimes. And then forget that I've changed a talent, because I almost never change talents. So, always laugh when people ask for primary stats for Affliction, and the only answer you give them is it depends. Well, yeah, it's the same for Ret Paladins. All 4 secondary stats have actually been pretty good, as in they're fairly close together. There's usually been ones that have been a bit behind the others. But, you know, there isn't like pick these 2. Sometimes you just have to say, pick these 2. Because I did, when I first started doing the guys even in Legion, said, you know, I made it clear, you actually just should sim it for yourself. But if you're going to keep moaning at me, do these. But I think, you know, over time we've got out of that habit. Yeah, Icy Veins is still there. That's largely fine. I mean, obviously the first Ret Legion guide for Icy Veins was a complete stinker, which I, you know, tore apart fairly savagely. And then it was fine, sort of. Well, it does depend. Depends on what gear they've got. Someone just comes on, which talent should I have? You know, for certain specs. Well, it does depend. I mean, it might depend just simply on, are you capable of using the talents that are actually going to give you the biggest output but the most difficult to use? Sometimes it actually does depend on that. It's like, well, in theory, this is the best talent for this situation, but actually, it takes you a little bit of skill to use. So maybe you'd be better with this one. It's always far better to understand something than it is just to get a cookie cutter response. Because even if you look at, like, you could look at Warcraft logs, you could look at the talents that the top players, or the top parsers, I should say, which, you know, sometimes can be the same thing, get on that they use on a particular boss, and you go, okay, so I should use those talents. Well, that may not be true. they might have certain gear that means that those talents are best for them. Or they may be adopting a strategy. It could be that the people who are passing highest on that boss are passing highest on that boss because of the particular role or strategy that's been adopted that allows them to do that. You know, so it isn't a straightforward thing. People will be much better off trying to learn their class instead of just asking for quick answers. It's the same thing in life. People who, you know, pour billions or millions at least of dollars into the self-help market, buying self-help books. Oh, buy this book, it'll sort your life out. No, learn these things. Learn how to do life. Don't read a bloody book. Unless your problem with life is that you can't read, in which case, yeah, read a book. We've all been there. I never used to use key bindings way back when. Yeah, that's right. I'm so fast at typing that I can just type cast space Crusader space strike. No problem. It's something to do while I'm waiting for the global cooldown to finish. Well, the interesting thing was, I sort of was and sort of was. It depended what I was doing. The irony was that when I was DPSing, I used to click. We had hardly any abilities then. It really didn't matter. You didn't have to move your mouse very far. But when I was healing, I didn't. Because you can't click when you're healing because you need your cursor to be hovering over the player frames. So I used to use bind. But why it was that I would switch from binds for healing to not for DPS, I have no idea. It was madness. But what happened was I sort of quit the game, early Wrath. And then when I came back, end of Cataclysm, we all of a sudden had so many abilities that I thought, shit, I can't do this. It was mental. So I had to learn. I had to keybind. I recognised that it needed to be done. So I taught myself. I just made myself keybind. Have I seen any Azeroth gear that has cleave? Not offhand. I know Wowhead have data mined some Azeroth traits. I've been through the Paladin ones. I talked about those last weekend. I haven't been through other classes yet. I don't have to worry about... I don't need to type everything. Yes, of course. Yes, I'll do that. I actually, now you joke about that though. I was, we were doing something in Throne of Thunder one time. Not progress raid. We were doing an achievement run in Throne of Thunder. I can't remember which bloody achievement it was. But we needed someone who doesn't know, they were on their shaman, but they don't normally play their shaman. And we needed a heroism. And they didn't have it on their bars. So they actually did type it out. With cast heroism, because they thought it'd be quicker than finding it in their spell book. Mouse over. Well, I use click, so I don't need mouse over macros. If you use click, it takes up 2 macro slots, and you can, you know, whatever. You can then put everything in it. So rather than filling up all your macro slots with individual mouse over macros, just use click is better. Also, it's better in another way as well. So for example, if like, you know, if on the rare occasion I might want to play Holy, so Judgment and Crusader Strike, I have my Judgment on 2 and Crusader Strike on 3. But for healing, I would like those to be healing spells. But I also use Judgment and Crusader Strike when as Holy. So I have Judgment, I still have them in the same place. But if I mouse over someone, Obviously, I will have 2 as Flash of Light. No, 2 as Holy Light and 3 as Flash of Light. I think 4 as Holy Shock. So, you know, and that's very easy to do on Clique as well. It's awesome add-on. Don't know how I would live without it. No, I'm not trying to be a shockadin. I never play Holy. It's just every now and then, just for a laugh, I've done an LFR as Holy. Click doesn't work with the Logitech G600. What do you mean Click doesn't work? Well, I don't have a G600. I actually still haven't changed, even though I've bought it and it's arrived, I still haven't replaced my mouse. Because the bloody button suddenly started working again as well. So, but I've got the next mouse lined up anyway for when I need to change it. I don't know what you mean by Click. Oh, Click. What you mean the add-on Click? Why would your mouse have anything at all to say with an add-on? How on earth does your mouse fuck up an add-on in WoW? I tried using Voodoo once, a long time ago, many years ago now. It might be quite different, but as soon as I found Click, I thought that was just loads better. We don't need an add-on for your gear sets. We used to need add-ons. What was it called? Shit, I can't remember what it was called now. But we've got it in game now. You can just set up all your different sets in game. It's one of your options on your character tab. Although I personally prefer just manually changing it if I can, because usually I forget to update all my saved sets when I get a new piece of gear. I mean, I sort of try and keep up to date with the speed set and my dungeon set in case I need to switch between speediness and killing stuff in a Mythic Plus dungeon. All the buttons are keybound to the Logitech software. Oh, well, there's a mistake. Yes, we may well do. I don't know how it's going to work. I mean, there might be one that's just top of the tree. You just use this one for this spec and this one for that spec, or the same one for that spec, but different trait combination. We'll have to see how it works out. Because we still, like people have already said, I've said, we still have so little information on exactly how it's going to work. And I'm not saying we should know by now, but we shouldn't be very far off from finding out, I don't think. Well, legendary combos certainly were with 2 pieces, and Azerite will have 3 pieces. However, the Azerite pieces will not be competing with other gear. Legendaries were competing with other gear, including tier sets, more importantly. So, you know, the Azerite thing should be easier to sort out. I won't have enough space in my inventory now, because, you know. In fact, if they don't introduce a legendary slot so that I can basically discard my legendaries but have them on hand, should I ever decide to do a time walking that uses them, I won't be happy. I wasn't happy that for the second Q&A in a row, Blizzard did not answer my question as well. Not at all happy. I'm also not happy that people are not asking them directly when they get to interview them. My void storage is full. Everything is full. I have things. I collect crap. Just as in real life, in game, I collect things. If it's unique and I can't get it anymore, I am not throwing it away. I even have a piece of fruit from vanilla that you can't get anymore. I have things from vanilla that don't even work anymore. I am not throwing it away because it's unique. It's an heirloom. Proper heirloom, not the stuff for which we actually have a tab. My void storage is next to nothing. There's no room in the void storage. It's poor. Absolute rubbish. It's pathetic. No. The fruit stays in the bank. I'm not eating it. I am very careful with these things. Anyway, right-clicking it will just transfer it. If it's in the bank, it'll just transfer it to your bags anyway. You just mustn't right-click it without the bank being open. I've got trinkets that, all right, technically I could get again, but, you know, why would I? Like the Dark Moon, the original Dark Moon trinkets I have. I have the trinket I got off Muru, which was a very highly desirable trinket that I got. Even though I was tanking that boss, but then, to be fair, I was going to DPS on the next boss, so it was mine. I have all sorts of stuff. I should have more stuff, but Blizzard stole some stuff from me. I used to have the Arcanite Ripper, but unfortunately that was on my other account that Blizzard refused to give me back. Ah, well, tier sets, ironically, I am happy about giving up, because I only use those for transmog purposes. You know, now that we've got the transmog thing. I mean, you might have thought that because we got the transmog thing, this expansion, that I would still have plenty of room in my bank, because obviously I was able to clear out a lot of room from my bank. But unfortunately, I managed to fill it up again quite quickly. The trinket serves no purpose, but it's a museum piece. Museum pieces are there to reminisce over. It's there for nostalgia, like mantelpiece knickknacks. Only I need, after 13 years playing this game, I need quite a large mantelpiece. Actually, it's not quite 30. Oh, no, it is. It's almost exactly 13 years since I started playing WoW. Because I started in May 2005. I can't remember exactly which day. I know it was May, though. So yes, in that amount of time and playing the game, obviously I took a hefty break, so it's not actually 13 continuous years. But nonetheless, I have acquired an awful lot of crap. Screenshots are not adequate. I mean, how many people would have kept their Braziers of Invocation? That still works in a couple of places. No, I don't remember the WoW sign-up page. Because I wasn't intended to play WoW. I'd played the Warcraft games. I knew about WoW. But I didn't think I'd like the idea of an MMO. Because I was already introduced to the internet. And I thought, why would I've already seen internet forums. And I thought, why would I want to play in a game with all these muppets around me? You know, because my idea of multiplayer is that there was some sort of vetting. If you didn't know them personally, there was some sort of vetting process to invite people into a multiplayer game. In an MMO, it's free for all. I thought this is the worst sort of hell. But a friend got me into it, so then it was all fine. Well, it's for time walking that they, you know, we need the legendaries thing, really. I have no room to store them. If they do not give me somewhere to put them, or increase the bank space, or do something, then they're just arseholes. But anyway, that is now 9 o'clock, or it is 9 o'clock my time anyway. I seem to have some messages. So we seem to have come to an end there. Thanks very much for coming on, everyone. I will be obviously back next week with the same thing. The next couple of days I'll be on with the Guild Raid again. We shall see how that goes. And then Friday I'll be back on beta, carrying on leveling my dwarf lump of a paladin. But, well, I have to, yes, my last word will be, I will have to, in the next few months, work out how some space I can arrange easily. Any items from WoD that I don't want to keep and are no longer of any use, like potions and stuff like that, I can get rid of. But yeah. But thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a good night, and I will maybe see you tomorrow, the day after, Friday, or just next Tuesday. So see you later.